interesting.
Tucker Carlson has been, very, very much on the attack vector of Ben Shapiro. And it has been the wars in Ukraine and Israel, and then issues like the atom bomb that, it's foreign policy that's truly become like the tearing and rending point here. So it is totally interesting. Here's Tucker Carlson's take on people who are calling for war and who, well, quite frankly, Tucker Carlson says is deeply immoral and depraved and demonic.
So I don't really care, but I did think it showed like the level of not just corruption, which I knew, but of like emotional instability and craziness. I mean, there are people, and I stopped reading any of it, but there are people on the right who have spent the last 2 months every single day focused on a conflict in a foreign country as our own country becomes dangerously unstable on the brink of financial collapse.
Benny Johnson is now taking his turn at destroying Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire after Ben Shapiro and the other members of the Daily Wire were trying to attack Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson for certain opinions that Tucker Carlson was stating over on the Joe Rogan Experience. Now, a lot of people have been making this whole thing about Tucker Carlson's comment to Joe Rogan about the atomic bombs that were dropped on Japan. But the Daily Wire took a lot of offense to a lot of other things that Tucker Carlson was saying throughout that interview as well. And what Benny Johnson really does a good job of exposing here is exposing the things that people aren't talking about that offended Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire. A lot of things that Tucker Carlson said to Joe Rogan that most people aren't talking about when they talk about this whole situation, as well as Benny bringing up a lot of old tweets from Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson talking about each other and beefing from a while back. Let's get into this video here from Benny Johnson, talking about the Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan situation and the meltdown that ensued from the Daily Wire and Ben Shapiro about it.
I think probably for good reason, breaking some paradigms that many conservatives have grown up with and that have been reinforced in the party. And I think that's also like very, very good. The newest breakdown, thermonuclear breakdown between the two of them, literally has to do with nuclear weapons. And Tucker Carlson saying that he totally opposed the use of nuclear weapons in World War II. Here's Ben Shapiro's take on that, with Tucker Carlson's take kind of baked in here from Joe Rogan.
There's a weird horseshoe theory thing that's happening here. We've talked about it before on the program, that you have this constellation of far leftists who are rather friendly toward Hamas, who generally are isolationist on foreign policy, but they're isolationist on foreign policy mainly because they believe that the United States is a nefarious force in the world. They're sort of Howard Zinn or Noam Chomsky with regard to American foreign policy. America is actually bad. That horseshoe theory has now swung all the way around, and it includes some people on the right. Now, as we'll talk about in a moment, when it comes to isolationism, as we've discussed, there are a bunch of different perspectives within the isolationist perspective. There is the we should not get involved in foreign conflicts no matter what perspective because we need the money here at home, which means that you're also in favor of cutting spending by the government on a wide variety of other subjects. There's also an isolationism that suggests that whenever America gets involved in foreign conflicts, that tends to taint the United States, not it's about the United States tainting the rest of the world. But there is a theory that has now arisen on the right that there is something deeply malign about the United States, something deeply wrong with the United States. This was made apparent over the weekend. Tucker Carlson was on Joe Rogan's show. Obviously, I'm very friendly with Joe. I think Joe does a great job during his interviews. And there was a clip from this interview that went particularly viral. This is a clip in which Tucker Carlson calls the United States evil for having dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima.
Not what he said. I mean, I keep saying it over and over again. Maybe he's inferring that, but it's not what he said. He's saying that anyone who defends it, who vehemently defends America's bomb dropping, atomic bomb dropping on Japan, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, you are evil for thinking that. For defending it and not even questioning, not even having the question be able to be thought in your brain. Like Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire members get literally pissed off when you even ask the question, when you pose the question to them, or just pose the question to, in this case, not even to them, to Joe Rogan. He's not saying 100% America is evil for dropping the bombs. He's not saying 100% America is not evil for dropping the bombs. He's saying that if you are not even allowing yourself to ask the question, you are probably evil. If you are 100% defending the nuking of innocent people in Japan, because hypothetically we saved some lives with those nukes, you are evil because you are defending 100% and not even allowing yourself to ask the question, is this bad or was this good? Was this beneficial or was it not? Ben Shapiro is not even allowing the question to be asked. Therefore, he is the evil that Tucker Carlson was referring to.
In Nagasaki in 1945, ending World War II. and then suggest that anyone who would justify that is also evil, which is a very traditionally left-wing perspective. It is not traditionally a particularly right-wing perspective because most people on the conservative side of the aisle tend to believe that America is a force for good in the world. And as we'll discuss, it turns out that dropping the atomic bomb on Japan was necessary for ending World War II and likely saved millions of lives, both American and Japanese. But here is Tucker.
Well, you could say the same about the atomic bomb, right?
Yes, you could.
And you could say that we have to develop it like Oppenheimer felt before the Nazis
I
did.
love that. How'd that work? How'd that work?
Well,
I love, by the way, that people on my side, I'll just admit it, on the right, have spent the last 80 years defending dropping nuclear weapons on civilians. Like, are you joking?
right.
That's just like prima facie evil.
Yeah.
If you can't, if we hadn't done that, then this, that, the other thing, that was actually a great savings. Like, no, it's wrong to drop nuclear weapons on people. And if you find yourself arguing that it's a good thing to drop nuclear weapons on people, then you are evil. Like it's not a tough one, right? It's not a hard call for you. It's not a hard call for me. So with that in mind, like, why would you want nuclear weapons? It's like just a mindless, childish sort of intellectual exercise to justify, like, oh no, it's really good because someone else will get it. How about no? How about like spending all of your effort to prevent this from happening?
Okay, actually, what would be childish is to assume that there are no other players in the world, for example, trying to develop nuclear weapons. The fact is the Nazis were trying to develop nuclear weapons. There was, in fact,
But Tucker is saying, like, this whole thing came about because they were discussing the issue of AI. And if we keep moving in the same direction that we are right now with AI, then bad things are going to happen. Everybody says it. All the smartest people in the world are saying it. And Joe Rogan brought up to Tucker Carlson, hey, you could probably say the same thing about nuclear weapons, right? Tucker Carlson said, yes, absolutely. And in a vacuum, if you defend the nuking of innocent people, you are an evil person. That's what Tucker Carlson said. So if in a vacuum, if defending, and I think we can all agree, except for warmongers like Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire, that nuking innocents in a vacuum is probably a bad thing. And if you defend that, you're evil. I think we can all agree. Now, if you can agree on that in a vacuum, then you could probably at least be able to pose the question to yourself, was it morally correct for us to nuke innocents in Japan? You could at least ask the question. Even if the answer is no, once you think it through, you could at least allow yourself to ask the question. Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire cannot.
in fact, a nuclear arms race that was happening at the time. Not only that, as it turns out, the Soviet Union then developed nuclear weapons. And it is mutually assured destruction and nuclear deterrence that has kept the world largely from sinking into another World War III-like mass casualty morass because of the horror of dropping the nuclear bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the first place.
So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. This is the question. Should America have dropped the nuclear bomb? Now, I think is quite interesting about this argument between the two of these guys is that it really does show the schism, the massive cratering that has happened between two different wings, the isolationist, more libertarian wing of the Republican Party and the more establishment war hawk wing of the Republican Party that Ben Shapiro represents, Tucker Shapiro over here. And the two of these people are totally going to approach this issue very, very differently. And they're both coming at it from what they
If you enjoy content like this, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. It really does help me out a ton. Let's get back to the video.
say is a moral perspective. Tucker saying it's morally repugnant to drop the nuclear bomb because the war was already won. The Nazis had already been defeated. Imperial Japan was limping along and, was totally and completely unable to project power outside of like their little island, which was being firebombed and decimated every single day. Also, interestingly enough, like if you look at the raw numbers, the firebombing of Tokyo killed far more people and was far more horrendous than the dropping of the nuclear bombs on Hiroshima or Nagasaki. So maybe you could have just kept doing that. The ushering in of the nuclear age also, and a fact check on Ben Shapiro here, yes, the Nazis wanted to create a nuclear weapon, but they weren't even close. Like the reality was there was somebody working on it. His name was Heisenberg, but he wasn't even remotely close to finishing a bomb. It never would have, given the trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is eventually it would have happened. Eventually somebody else other than the United States, if we decided to, take the moral high ground and not create the weapon of mass destruction, somebody else would have done it eventually, because the United States weren't the only people who were working on it. So somebody else would have got it done. I don't really like that argument against Ben Shapiro. I don't think it really checks out. I think that's kind of just like a point to Ben Shapiro. Yeah, maybe it wouldn't have happened in time for, that particular war to be won by another country with weapons of mass destruction, but it would have eventually came about. And in my opinion, I think it's probably best that the United States does have that weapon first, because, I don't think any country in the world is only a force for good. I think obviously every country is capable of doing evil things with weapons of mass destruction, but I would like to think that the American people at least would try their best to keep their country in check when using those weapons, whereas other countries don't have that ability. Like Russia, they don't have the ability to say, no, please, Vladimir Putin, do not use this weapon of mass destruction. They don't. There's like 5 people that have to agree, and if they agree, boom goes the nukes. There's also some very, very interesting tweets that Benny Johnson brings up here from Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro talking about each other, and I find this very interesting. These are things that I have been also referring to throughout this whole controversy between the Daily Wire and Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan, but Benny Johnson actually brings them up, and they're very interesting.
Tucker Carlson has been, very, very much on the attack vector of Ben Shapiro, and it has been the wars in Ukraine and Israel, and then issues like the atom bomb. That it's foreign policy that's truly become like the tearing and rending point here. So it is totally interesting. Here's Tucker Carlson's take on people who are calling for war and who, well, quite frankly, Tucker Carlson says is deeply immoral and depraved and demonic.
So I don't really care, but I did think it showed like the level of not just corruption, which I knew, but of like emotional instability and craziness. I mean, there are people, and I stopped reading any of it, but there are people on the right who have spent the last 2 months every single day focused on a conflict in a foreign country as our own country becomes dangerously unstable on the brink of financial collapse with tens.
And that's the red pill. That's the red pill that people need to start taking, and that people like Tucker Carlson, who are just logical, common sense thinkers, very grounded thinkers, when you see people like Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire talking about a certain war every single day and starting to ignore the issues within America more and more as that certain war ramps up more and more, and the people who are combating them become greater in numbers, so they have to defend themselves more. That's the red pill for people like Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones, who recently just spoke out about it. People who I would never think would actually speak out against, like Ben Shapiro. Obviously, Tucker and Ben have been going at it for a while, but Alex Jones I never thought would speak out against Ben Shapiro and the talking points that he spews, as well as the Daily Wire. Everybody's starting to wake up now, and the Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire are doing a great job at waking people up and realizing a lot of these people, they're not really loyal to America and bettering them. They're loyal to other countries out in the Middle East.
Tens of millions of people who shouldn't be here in the country. We don't know their identities or the purpose of their being here. Like stuff that's could destroy the country for real and make it impossible for my kids to live here. They've said nothing about that, and they're focused with laser intensity on foreign conflicts. And I'm like, at some point, I've got 4 kids. If I'm so caught up in the problems of my neighbor's children and completely ignoring my own children as they get addicted to drugs and kill themselves, I'm not against helping my neighbor's kids, but clearly I don't love my kids. I mean, right. that's the only logical conclusion, and they don't care about the country at all. And that's kind of their prerogative, but I do, because I have no choice, because I'm from here, my family's been here hundreds of years, I plan to stay here. Like, I'm shocked by how little they care about the country, and including the person you mentioned. And I can't imagine how someone like that could get an audience of people who claim to care about America, because he doesn't, obviously. Right?
Right. Well, I mean, Tucker, we've seen it too on free speech. I mean, people who become multimillionaires, who've made entire careers, who've literally became famous, on this very reason. I know you've spoken about this previously, but it's very important to our audience as well. Is that standing up for free speech rights of people you disagree with is probably the most important exercise, and we've seen some of that come for American citizens on Palestine. How do you work through this too when we're both under such immense pressure, even social pressure of like, how could you support this? Take maybe the context of the university presidents. We've got billionaires.
And Tucker really made a good point, and I don't understand how people who can claim that they love America and they want the best for America can side with Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire and what they've been doing the last 6 months. It doesn't make any sense. And the craziest part is people who claim they're America first. Ben Shapiro claims he's America first, and Daily Wire claims they're America first. And the people who support them also claim that. And they, every single thing that they do and say, not saying that I'm America first, everything they do and say outside of that proves that they're not America first. They're that other country first, and it's just wild. And then, this guy, I'm not 100% sure who this is, but he's making a great point to Tucker as well. The same thing happened with free speech. They made they became multimillionaires. The Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro became multimillionaires off claiming free speech, claiming they support free speech, and then they fire Candace Owens for exercising speech. But the thing is, you can say whatever the hell you want, just don't go against that one country that Ben Shapiro will not allow you to go against. That's where he draws the line, because he is that country first. He's not America first. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you're thinking about Benny Johnson pulling out the receipts, going in on Ben Shapiro, and just letting it be known that he's also on Tucker Carlson's side with the whole thing. Let me know what you're thinking about this Benny Johnson, Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, Ben Shapiro situation.